It started with silence. Not the polite kind that fills the meeting room after a PowerPoint slide, but the heavy kind that presses against your ribs when something is wrong, and you can't yet name it. I was the last one in the office, the hum of the servers filling the room like background noise for a thought I didn't want to have. I tried logging into my drive, and the system told me my password was wrong. I typed it again, slower this time, and again it was wrong. I thought maybe I was tired, maybe I'd made a mistake, but when I checked the login history, I saw it. My account had been accessed from the executive floor. My username. My permissions. The timestamp was right after I'd left. There was only one person who would be reckless enough to do that, the CEO's son. He'd been working here for a few months, learning the ropes as his father called it. He was one of those people who believed access was earned through last names, not work. I stared at the log, feeling a strange mix of anger and disbelief. My login. My files. My name. He'd used all of it like it was his toy. I closed my laptop and sat back. The air felt thinner, heavier somehow. I wasn't sure what I'd do, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to shout or make a scene. That's what he'd expect. Instead, I'd give him exactly what he wanted, access. Only this time I'd decide what he'd find. The next few days I built my trap quietly. Not with firewalls or flashy scripts, but with something simpler, decoy files. I made them look real. Contracts, budgets, strategy notes. Every one of them detailed, believable, but worthless. I even added fake email drafts, carefully worded messages that hinted at secret deals and mergers. I made them interesting enough to keep him curious, but harmless if they ever left the building. I embedded little trackers in them, hidden metadata that told me who opened what and when. Every move he made would leave a digital fingerprint. The night he came back, I was ready. I saw his access light up my logs. He opened the fake contract first, then a spreadsheet, then one of the confidential emails. I watched in real time as he downloaded, exported, clicked again. My heart raced, but not from fear, from control. For the first time, I wasn't the one being violated. I was the one watching. I let him think he was winning. I let him believe he was clever. Over the weekend, he got bolder. He started dropping hints in casual chats, mentioning things that only someone with insider info would know. A few coworkers even came to me, whispering about possible mergers. I just nodded and let the rumor spread. Monday morning, legal called a meeting. They traced the leak back to my account. I walked in calm, carrying my notebook, the one where I'd written down every log, every timestamp, every false file. When they asked if I'd shared anything, I told them no, and I showed them proof. The CEO sat in that meeting too. When the IT team pulled the device records, his face went pale. The data pointed straight to his son's laptop. He didn't look at me, he looked at the table, jaw tight. I said nothing. I didn't want to humiliate him. I wanted him to see what his son's carelessness had cost. After that meeting, the son was given a warning. Nothing public. Just a quiet talk behind a closed door. He didn't lose his job. He didn't even lose access. And that's when I knew the lesson hadn't landed. So I waited. I let him keep thinking he dodged it. I made more decoys, more traps. I let curiosity become habit. Over the next few weeks, he kept using my login, not as often but enough. He'd peek into folders that weren't his, send files to himself. He thought he was untouchable. Then came the perfect moment. A vendor presentation. The company was preparing a set of documents for an external consultancy. I slipped in one more decoy file, labeled valuation model, confidential. It looked expensive, tempting, important. He took the bait. He emailed it to a friend outside the company, someone who ran a small podcast. Within hours, whispers began. A rumor about internal valuations. It wasn't dangerous, but it was enough to cause alarm. Legal found out. The CEO was forced to deal with it this time. The meeting was short. His son denied it, then tried to justify it, then finally fell silent when they showed him the email trail. The fallout was quiet but real. The company couldn't sweep it under the rug anymore. They called for tighter access controls. A new security policy. Everyone, even executives, had to re-authenticate their logins. Training sessions were rolled out company-wide. The CEO framed it as strengthening our protocols. But we all knew what it meant. His son had broken trust. He wasn't fired, but his privileges were cut. And when he tried to log in again using my credentials, the system stopped him. Automatic alert. IT caught it within minutes. He was suspended pending review. That was how the story ended. Not with shouting, not with revenge in flames, but with quiet consequences. The CEO called me in one afternoon. We talked like two tired people who'd both learned something the hard way. He thanked me for protecting the company, though he didn't say the word revenge. He didn't need to. I wasn't angry anymore. Just tired, relieved maybe. The son came back weeks later, quieter, humbled. He apologized in a meeting. Not just to me but to the team. He said he'd been careless, that he'd confused access with trust. People forgave him cautiously. The company moved on. Security got tighter. Respect for boundaries grew. And for the first time I felt like my patience had actually built something, not just destroyed it. Looking back now, I realize the best revenge isn't loud. It's the kind that teaches a lesson no one can ignore. He stole my login, so I let him steal shadows. I let him chase illusions until the truth caught up with him. And when it did, it didn't just expose him, it strengthened the walls around all of us. Revenge doesn't always need to burn. Sometimes it just needs to illuminate. After that week, the office felt different. Not louder, not colder, just aware. People stopped leaving their screens unlocked. Conversations quieted when someone entered the room. You could feel trust recalibrating itself, like the company had learned how fragile it really was. I didn't seek attention, didn't bring up what happened, but I noticed how the CEO looked at me now. Not with the casual nod he used to give, but with the kind of respect that comes from realizing who kept the ship from sinking. I spent more time at my desk, working on projects that actually mattered. The decoy files were still there, hidden in the system, but I stopped checking the trackers. I didn't need to anymore. The damage had already rewritten the culture. Everyone started to care about the things they used to take for granted: privacy, accountability, digital honesty. It was almost poetic. But revenge has a strange aftertaste. It's satisfying, yes, but also hollow in a way you don't expect. There were moments I caught myself wondering if I'd gone too far. Maybe I could have warned him. Maybe I should have confronted him the first time. Yet every time that thought appeared, I remembered the smug look on his face when he talked about borrowing things. The arrogance. The entitlement. No, I didn't ruin him. I just let him walk into his own reflection. A few months later, there was a company event, some new client partnership celebration. Everyone dressed up, champagne glasses in hand, fake laughter echoing off glass walls. The CEO gave a speech about trust, innovation, teamwork. And when he mentioned accountability, his eyes flicked toward me for a moment, just a flicker, but enough. It wasn't gratitude exactly. It was acknowledgement. The kind of silent thank you that doesn't need applause. After the speech, his son approached me. It was awkward at first. He stood there holding his drink, trying to find the right words. He didn't make excuses this time. He said quietly, "You didn't destroy me. You could have." I didn't say anything right away. I just looked at him, and in that silence something shifted. He wasn't the same kid who thought the world revolved around his last name. He'd been cracked open by consequence. "I didn't want to destroy you," I said finally. "Just to remind you what you almost destroyed." He nodded. There was a pause, then he asked, "Do you think people can come back from something like that?" I told him yes, but only if they stop thinking forgiveness is owed. It has to be earned every day through choices that no one sees. He took that in quietly, and for the first time I saw a glimpse of humility in him. Maybe it wouldn't last, maybe it would, but that was no longer my concern. My part in the story was done. Work became steady again after that. The company's new security initiative was a success. I got a quiet promotion, the kind that comes without a speech, just a new title in the system and a pay bump that shows up 2 weeks later. No announcement, no spotlight. Just quiet validation. That's the kind of reward I've always valued. Sometimes, late at night, I think about how strange the digital world is, how fragile trust can be when a password can define your reputation. One login, one careless act, one line crossed, and everything can change. I thought about how easy it would have been to retaliate loudly, to send an email, to humiliate him publicly. But that's not what revenge is supposed to be. Real revenge isn't about breaking someone. It's about making them face themselves. In the months that followed, the company started running mentorship programs for new hires, training sessions about ethics, cybersecurity, and integrity. I was asked to lead one. Standing there in front of the group, I didn't tell them what happened, but I told them this. Every system has vulnerabilities. Not all of them are in the code. Some are in people. The moment you treat trust like a shortcut, you're already writing your own breach. Some of them looked puzzled. Some nodded. Maybe only a few really understood. But that's fine. Lessons don't have to land right away. They just have to linger long enough to grow roots. That night, as I left the building, I stopped by the server room one last time. The hum was still there. The same one I'd heard that first night when everything began. But now it sounded softer. Calmer. Maybe it was just me who'd changed. I looked through the glass window into the quiet rows of machines, each light blinking like a heartbeat, each drive holding secrets and stories no one would ever tell. I smiled faintly. Revenge had run its course. Justice, in its quiet, understated way, had already been served. And as I walked out into the cool night, I realized something else. Peace doesn't come when you win. It comes when you stop needing to. A few weeks after that night, I started noticing small changes, tiny, almost invisible signs that the company had learned something lasting. People logged out when they left their desks. They used stronger passwords. Conversations about accountability weren't jokes anymore. Even the interns seemed to understand that what they touched, what they accessed, mattered. The CEO's son still worked there, but quietly now. No more loud entrances or careless boasts. He kept his head down, did his work, asked questions instead of assuming he knew the answers. I never spoke to him much after that evening, but sometimes our eyes met in passing, and there was an unspoken understanding between us. I didn't hate him anymore. I didn't need to. He had already done the hardest thing a person can do. He'd learned. But the strange thing about revenge is that once it's done, it leaves behind this space. A quiet void where anger used to live. You spend so long building your plan, so long carrying the weight of it, that when it's finally over, you don't quite know what to do with yourself. I'd won, sure, but I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt clear. It was around that time I began to look at everything differently. I saw how fragile ambition can make people. How fear of irrelevance drives even the privileged to cheat. The CEO's son wasn't the only one. He was just the most obvious. The system we worked in rewarded appearances more than integrity, and sometimes the only way to remind people what's real is through a shock that ripples quietly through their comfort. Months turned into a year. I got promoted again, this time into strategy. The irony wasn't lost on me. The person whose login was once misused was now helping design the very systems meant to protect company data. I'd sit in meetings about cybersecurity, watching executives debate policy as if it were just lines on a spreadsheet, and I'd think of that night when I first saw my account breached. One small act of arrogance had forced an entire company to grow up. One evening, as I was leaving the office, I ran into the CEO. He was different too, older somehow, though only a year had passed. He stopped me near the elevator, hands in his pockets, a tired smile on his face. "You know," he said, "I used to think control meant having the power to stop mistakes before they happen. Turns out, it's really about how you deal with them when they do." I didn't know what to say at first. There was a long pause before I nodded. Sometimes letting people fall is the only way they learn where the ground is. He gave a small laugh, the kind that hides regret. You handled it better than I did, he said. Better than I could have. Then he looked down as if remembering the worst part. You didn't embarrass him. You could have, but you didn't. I didn't need to, I said quietly. He did that to himself. He looked at me for a long moment before the elevator doors opened. That's the kind of lesson that sticks, he murmured as he stepped in. For both of us. The doors closed and I stood there for a moment, thinking about how strange it is. How sometimes justice doesn't look like punishment. Sometimes it looks like growth. After that, I started keeping a small notebook again, not for tracking traps or timestamps this time, but for ideas, ways to build systems that protect trust instead of policing it. I wrote about culture, about ethics, about the small things that make workplaces human. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about prevention. And yet, sometimes late at night, I'd still think about that first spark, that moment when betrayal and opportunity collided. How it had changed everything. How a simple act of arrogance had forced an entire structure to confront its own reflection. That's the thing about revenge. You think it's about one person. But it never is. It's about the echo it leaves behind. The way it forces everyone to listen, even after the noise has faded. Now, when new employees join, they go through the digital ethics session I helped design. It's mandatory, but it's not a lecture. It's a story. Anonymized, stripped of names, but the bones of it are all there. A trusted employee's login was misused by someone higher up, the training module says. It led to the creation of stronger systems and a shift in company culture. Every time I see a new hire listening to that story, brows furrowed, I smile to myself. They don't know it's me. They don't need to. The point isn't who I am. It's what they'd take away from it. I don't check my access logs anymore. I don't wait for pings or alerts. I trust the systems we've built, and more than that, I trust the people behind them, not because they're perfect, but because they've seen what happens when trust is broken. And that's enough. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't making someone pay. It's making sure no one ever has to go through the same thing again.